Well, Israel has faced continual attacks from the very first day of its existence. And throughout the years, it's the ongoing threats, the Jewish state has proven remarkably resilient. The Genius of Israel is a new book that gives key insights into the Israeli people and offers hope for a path to lasting peace.
Authors Dan Senor and Paul Senor had no way of knowing of the October 7th attacks when they wrote The Genius of Israel. But the timing of their book may be inadvertently on point. In it, they make the case that the shared goal of building a secure Jewish state has united a diverse group of people, a people who believe that their destiny is connected and that they must work together to defend and build their society. They point out that Israel has managed to thrive over the years, noting incredible innovation in business and fertility rates that are nearly double that of the United States and Europe's. In comparison to the West, their life expectancy is higher and their rates of death from substance abuse and suicide are lower. Senor is a former editor and columnist at the Jerusalem Post, and Senor is a former U.S. presidential campaign advisor and Pentagon official in Baghdad. Both share keen observations about what has helped Israel to succeed as a nation, qualities it will need in this present moment if it is to prevail.
Well, Dan Senor is here with us now, and I've got to ask, in light of October 7th, would you have written this book any differently?
It's a great question, and the answer is no. In 2023, when we were working on the book, Israel appeared to be at the depth of division. There was this big debate in Israel over judicial reforms of the government, and the country seemed incredibly divided.
I was really worried.
Yeah, between the very religious Jews and very secular Jews in Israel, between Jews from parts of North Africa and Jews from the West, from like Eastern Europe, between the sort of secular, wealthy tech types in Tel Aviv and the people in the struggling towns of the periphery of Israel. There seemed to be all this division. And what we were sort of warning people is don't get so hysterical. This country bounces back. This society comes together. This country's incredibly resilient. It will get out of this period too. We didn't anticipate, obviously, October 7th, where now you're seeing incredible resilience and you're seeing incredible solidarity. What we lay out in our book are the building blocks of why Israel is both, there's so much solidarity there, and why there's so much resilience. And so we knew it would come. We didn't expect it to be October 7th. But if you want to understand why Israel's responding the way it's responding, if you want to understand how Israel's bouncing back, if you want to understand the resilience, that we explain it in the book.
Well, I guess it was a joke, but there was some serious. My last trip to Israel, I was told in Tel Aviv that they needed a passport to go to Jerusalem.
Right.
And just yesterday at the rally, one of the speakers says, you know, if you have 10 Jews in a room, you're going to have 10,000 opinions. Yeah. That it just seems to be naturally leading to some kind of, I'm different than you, even though we're the same. So what's the genius of Israel?
The genius is a few things. One, and again, when my mother, who lives in Jerusalem, who's 85 years old, she's like, I don't like the title. I don't like the title because it sounds like it's about Israeli brain power. Oh. And she was worried about that. We're like, we should look, Israel does have a lot of smart people, but we think the real genius of Israel is that the society holds together. People feel a sense of belonging. People feel a sense of connectedness to one another. So what is that genius? So one, national military service. Mm-hmm. The fact that most Israelis serve in the military. What does that actually mean? In addition to them developing incredible skills, they learn not to see one another as the other, because it brings all walks of life into the same unit, into the same military unit. So you can have the son of a taxi cab driver and the son of a tech billionaire all serving in the hull of a tank together, like you're seeing right now, defending the country, saying Jewish prayers together, being part of the same unit, the same team, the same community. So that's part of the genius. The other part of, and by the way, there's one other factor there, is it gives people a sense of ownership of the country. When you serve your country, you feel like, wow, like this is my country too. This country's worth fighting for. I care. I feel a sense of belonging, and that gives people a sense of meaning. Secondly, the role of ritual. Now, you've spent time in Israel. Mm-hmm. So to me, the two of the most powerful experiences in Israel for anyone visiting, I always say when people go, I say, be there for Shabbat, be there for the Sabbath, because the country really does slow down. It really shuts down. every Friday night, over 70 to 80% of Israeli Jews do something on Shabbat to honor the Shabbat with their family. Sometimes 2 generations, 3 generations, 4 generations getting together every Friday night. Now, we call the chapter in this book, in our book, Thanksgiving Every Week. It's like Israelis have a Thanksgiving every Friday night. And it just slows the country down. It keeps generations connected to one another. And there's a sense that it's personal, meaning it's my family, and it's collective. The whole country is experiencing it. One of the things I worry about the United States, in many respects, this book is a blueprint for how the U.S. could try to reverse its social decline, is we ask Americans, how many rituals are there in this country that you feel that you're participating in and that the whole country is participating at the same time? There aren't that many. Second, on Memorial Day in Israel, so the day that Israel honors its fallen, we open the book by describing how Israel honors its Memorial Day. It's not a holiday. There are no sales on Memorial Day. It's not just another long weekend. People don't go to the beach. The country actually slows down, and actually for 2 minutes in Israel, on Memorial Day and on Holocaust Remembrance Day, there's these sirens that go off. We're hearing the sirens now.
And everybody stops.
Everybody stops. Everyone gets out of their cars. You see these images of people getting out of their cars on highways and just standing there. People get out of restaurants and schools and auditoriums and everywhere. I've been there many times. And the whole idea that you're remembering someone you lost because of war or terrorism, and you're sharing in this experience with the country where just everyone takes a moment and says, we're in this together. That is the genius of Israel.
Well, the old adage that Israel hasn't kept the Sabbath has kept Israel.
That's exactly, that's...
And when Christian families come to me and say, how do I teach my children? I say, well, you've got to do what the Jewish people have done for generations. It's not about observance in the church or the synagogue. It's all about observance in your home.
Right.
If it's not part of your family,
right,
then, what are you doing generationally? And
right.
I think it's absolutely key.
Right.
You mentioned in the book the People's Army, and now we're seeing it writ large as plane loads of people are going. Americans are saying, I need to serve, and they're trying their best to get to Tel Aviv so that they can rejoin the army.
Yeah, so my children go to a Jewish religious school, Jewish day school in New York City, and we have many Jewish Israeli families at the school who are in the United States for a few years working, and some of their parents have gotten on those planes and gone back to serve reserves. Now, in Israel, reserve duty goes through your 40s. So you serve in the Army 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And then for most people, they're out, except they could be in the reserves, and they have reserve training, like they go back in every year into their 40s. When October 7th happened, the IDF said, this last year, things were pretty divided. We don't know what, we're going to put out the sort of the bat signal to call in reserves. We don't know what turnout will be, A. B, Israelis are traveling all over the world. Many of them are working around the world. We don't know how easy it'll be for some of them to get back. So they overshot in how many people they called out because they thought they'd get about an 80% turnout. In many places in the country, they've gotten about 150% turnout.
Oh, wow.
People are coming out of all over the place. Also, as you say, flooding the airports in the United States, trying to fly back. They all want to serve. There are people who are aged out, who are well into their 40s, who should be done with reserves, who are showing up saying, I know I'm too old, I want to serve. There are the Haredi Jews, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, who actually have an effectively some kind of exemption that they don't have to serve because they study at yeshivas, at Jewish seminaries. They're now showing up to IDF enlistment centers saying, I want to enlist. So the country, it comes back to my earlier point, it's like the country is just coming together, and you see it through service in the military. We quote one guy, one public intellectual in our book, a religious biblical scholar named Mika Goodman, who's a brilliant guy. He says, what you need to understand about Israel is it's a small country with a big story. It's a story of biblical proportions. It's a story that what matters in Israel today has implications for how we think about the past 2,000 years and the next 2,000 years. And because it's a small country and every person feels that they have a role, they have, that person who says, I know I've aged out of the reserves, but my country's under siege, I'm going to serve. That person feels they have a role. There's something they can do. Even people who aren't serving in the military, there's incredible civilian volunteer turnout right now, like you've never seen before. Hundreds of thousands of people volunteering. They want to have a role. They have a role. And that's what I think Goodman says in our book when he says it's a small country with a big story, a story of biblical proportions, and I can shape it. The line he uses, I can touch history. And I think many of the people turning out feel that way.
How important is it to have purpose?
Yeah.
I've heard again and again from Israelis, whether they're secular or observant, we're supposed to be a light to the nations. They're quoting Isaiah.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they don't even realize they're quoting Isaiah.
Yeah.
Why is purpose so important to the genius of Israel?
Because Israel ranks, in the most recent study, the UN does this study every year, it's ranking the surveys of the happiest countries in the world. Israel ranked the 4th happiest country in the world. The nicest thing the UN has ever said about Israel. They ranked Israel as the 4th happiest country in the world. And even in the world, and even in recent years, it's still been in the top 10.
And let me underline, that includes Arab Israelis.
Exactly, exactly. In fact, there's a recent study out now that shows that Arab Israelis are feeling more solidarity and upbeatness about Israel and being part of Israel than they've ever felt before. So, happiness, what does that actually mean? We get into this in this book. We don't actually mean happy like, hey, we're all having a great time. It's about, happiness is really about life satisfaction, which is about living with purpose. That people, I like to say Israelis have a reason to get out of bed in the morning. They feel that they have a purpose. And when you live with purpose, and it gives you a sense of meaning. And when you live with meaning, you have a happier, more satisfied life. So in the opening of the book, we interview this woman, and we kind of see the opening of our book through her eyes, which is the Israeli paradox, which is how is it this country that's surrounded by enemies, that's been in a state of war since its founding, as we've seen in the last few weeks, with the genocidal actor on its border trying to slaughter and butcher its citizens. There's another one up on the north who could do the same thing tomorrow. You've got Iran not that far away that could try to do the same. There's incredible stress in the country. There's political division domestically. It's an expensive city, an expensive country. This woman who visits Israel, because she's dating an Israeli guy, and she comes to Israel. She's a journalist from San Francisco. She comes to Israel, and she writes this piece saying, which we open the book with, why are Israelis so damn happy? That's what she says. Why? I don't understand it. They shouldn't be happy. And what she learns is, and we unpack her perspective because she's more objective than we are, than Saul and I are. What she basically says is, these are people who are living with purpose. They know why they get up in the morning. They're building this country. They want to put Israel on the map. They have a role in shaping history. They have a role in touching history. It all matters. And when you have that sense of purpose, I just think it affects your happiness. It affects your sense of belonging. Israel doesn't have a loneliness crisis like we're dealing with in the United States. Israel doesn't have deaths of despair like we're experiencing in the United States. When we're working on the book, the CDC came out with a report saying there's a teen mental health crisis in the United States. And I will tell you, the new headline that came out, which gave me chills as the father of teenage boys, the CDC says we now have a teen suicide crisis in the United States, which we've never seen before, where teens in staggeringly record numbers are taking their own lives or trying to take their own lives. What on earth is going on in this country where there's so much breakdown, social decline, that you have this kind of epidemic, that it's an actual thing? In Israel, you have none of it. You have no loneliness epidemic. You don't have a teen mental health crisis. You certainly don't have a teen. Israel has the lowest rate of teen suicide in the OECD. You don't have deaths of despair. So we try in the book to understand why that is the case. Why is Israel such an outlier? Israel's having many more children, right? Israelis they're way above the replacement rate. Their population is young and growing, while most countries in the West are aging and shrinking. We try to understand the book why that is. And we hope in our book we can provide a blueprint for the West, specifically for the United States. And we come back to your question, which is, when people live with a sense of purpose, they know why they're getting up in the morning, it changes their whole outlook, including their sense of meaning and their life satisfaction and happiness. And Israelis have that in droves.
Yes, they do. In the book, it's called The Genius of Israel, and I encourage you to get it. As Dan said, it is a blueprint for how you can discover the same things, whether it's purpose for your life, how to have a family and how to live in that family in community, what your church can do, what your neighborhood can do, what your city can do. How can we all come together and reestablish this wonderful thing called community? I encourage you to get it. It's in bookstores everywhere. So, Dan, thank you so much.
I really appreciate it.